This is awesome. You know, I've been backstage listening to the speakers, and the courage that I've heard them exhibit is awesome. See, oftentimes we conflate the bad outcomes of gentrification with the good outcomes, right? And gentrification means when more affluent people move into a community and fix it, but sometimes there's a displacement of the local residents there. Indeed, it's horrible when local businesses have to dislocate from where they are because of gentrification. And it's terrible when people have to move because of gentrification. But for those residents that get to stay, they have better public health options, public safety options, better retail options, and an overall better quality of life. So here's the question. How do we separate the bad outcomes from the good outcomes? How do we make gentrification a tool for community development? Well, here's the good news. Gentrification is predictive, right? It doesn't happen quickly. So there's ways to implement policies to, again, try to distill the bad outcomes from the good outcomes. But first, gentrification is predictive. There's two traits, and when I tell you this, it'll seem obvious, as to what leads to gentrification within an urban area. The first one is job growth. People come to cities to work, right? The second one is population growth. As people move to cities, industry and commerce builds up around the people moving to the city for that job growth. And that virtuous cycle creates gentrification within an urban area. Let me give you another example. New York City. Show of hands, how many people here are from New York City, born and raised? Raise your hand. All right, there's a few of you out there. All right, so those few native New Yorkers, you can relate to this story. Between 1950 and 1990, New York lost 1 million people. It went from a city with 8 million stories to 7 million stories. And you could feel it. Neighborhoods were emptying out, crime was on the rise, and some said New York City was unmanageable. So what happened? Between 1990 and 2015, New York went through its greatest immigration boom ever, even more so than during the Ellis Island phase 100 years ago. 1.5 million people came into New York City in this 25-year period. Or to put it another way, the entire city of Philadelphia landed in New York City. And the transformation that you see here in New York today is a direct result of that. We lost our manufacturing base, we held on to our finance base, but New York City also became a city of media and new media, tech and high tech, healthcare and colleges. And again, New York transformed to what it was today. I did a lot of my work in Harlem, so people often ask me, Ed, what was the secret sauce to why Harlem turned around? And I tell them, it wasn't anything much, nothing special about Harlem. This happened throughout New York City, and that map right there indicates a number of neighborhoods around the core here in Manhattan, neighborhoods that gentrified. Harlem is one of them. Story in Queens. Long Island City, industrial dump. Williamsburg in Brooklyn, 25 years ago, another industrial dump, right? Lower East Side, Jersey, Hoboken, Jersey City. These cities were nowhere 25 years ago, now heavily sought after cities. So again, now that we realize that gentrification works to fix the physical aspects of impoverished communities, how can we distill the bad outcomes from the good outcomes? Well, I have three ways, or three thoughts. The first is, let's keep the residents where they are. And we can do that through a form of, thank you, clap, thank you. Keep the residents where they are. And we can do that through a form of rent stabilization. Thank God New York City has rent stabilization. But we should do that in other cities that are going through gentrification. Because remember, gentrification is predictive. The second one is, let's implement some form of rent stabilization, even for local businesses. Because gentrification happens slowly, so cities could incentivize landlords to then give short-term stabilized leases to owners, to business owners, so that they can participate in the gentrification that's happening around them. And last, Education. Educate local residences and local businesses on what's happening around them so that they can benefit from it. Impoverished communities demand action, not words. If we can somehow figure out how to have people living there in these impoverished communities benefit from gentrification instead of being overrun by gentrification, then we just may have something. My name is Ed Poteet. Enjoy your TEDx talk.